Today we're debating Bill C-21. Now, my Conservative colleagues have already laid out some of the bill's content and really the false narrative that the Liberals have tried to advance when they're trying to pass this bill. We know that there's a significant crime problem in many of our urban centres, especially in urban centres where we've seen a rise in shootings and gun crime. We also know that illegal weapons are the real problem. We know that in the city of Toronto, Toronto police have clearly stated that over 85% of the crimes involving a firearm in that city were weapons that were illegally smuggled in from the United States. We also know, as a matter of fact, CBC reported that municipalities across the country report very similar stats. They say, depending on the municipality, it's between 70 and 95% of all guns that are used in the commission of crimes have been imported from the United States. The stats clearly prove that very few crimes were committed by those who legally are permitted to own them, the real targets of Bill C-21. You will notice that the Liberals never share that data. They never say that legal gun owners are not the problem, because as a matter of fact, that's the group of people that they like to target. They want to have Canadians believe that legal gun owners are the problem and that they are scary and they need to be eliminated. They are stating in this bill that they want to see the end of trading of these guns. As a matter of fact, it's important that Canadians know that anybody who owns a weapon that's addressed in this bill has gone through extensive training and background checks. And the stats clearly indicate that they are not the problem when it comes to crime in our cities. The Liberals have been fabricating a narrative that is completely hypocritical when you see what they've done. You see, Bill C-21, it does next to nothing to deal with smuggled firearms or target the criminals that import, sell, and use them. What makes the Liberals even more hypocritical is the fact that they did have a bill that dealt with these criminals. It was Bill C-5. In that bill, Liberals actually reduced the mandatory minimum imprisonments for criminals that were involved in the following crimes. They reduced the penalties for those who had unauthorized possession of prohibited weapons or restricted weapons. They reduced the penalties for possession of prohibited or restricted firearms with ammunition. They reduced the penalties for possession of firearms obtained by commission of an offense. They reduced the penalties for firearm trafficking. They reduced the penalties for possession of firearms for the purposes of trafficking, and they reduced the penalties of knowingly importing and exporting an unauthorized firearm. They reduced the penalties for the people that are actually the problem when it comes to gun crime in this country. It is clear to see that the Liberals have no interest in dealing with the real problem, in taking illegal weapons off of our streets. But as if we needed any additional evidence that the Liberal government will go to disturbing lengths to advance their own political agenda, in breaking news just yesterday afternoon, we learned that they would jeopardize the independence of the institution of the RCMP for their political interests. The evidence included in the report that was released is some of the scariest evidence of how low this government will go and how many boundaries it will break to advance its own political agenda. In the Halifax Examiner, they expose the rot that exists in this government and the manipulation they expect from the highest levels of what should be an independent, trusted public institution. The headline screamed, RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki tried to jeopardize mass murder investigation to advance the Prime Minister's gun control efforts. Jennifer Henderson continues on, and I'm reading out of the report. RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki made a promise to the Public Safety Minister and the Prime Minister's office to leverage the mass murders of April 18th 19th, 2020, to get a gun control law passed. A week after the murders, Lucky pressured RCMP in Nova Scotia to release details of the weapons used by the killer. But RCMP commanders in Nova Scotia refused to release such details, saying doing so would threaten their investigations into the murders. The Trudeau government's gun control objectives were spelled out in an order in council issued in May of 2020.
I do have a point of order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I suspect you might be thinking I'm rising to say that the member is stating myth-truths on the record, but that's not it. The member has made reference to the Prime Minister by using his name, and you're not allowed to use the Prime Minister's name. Equally, you can't use any member by name.
Perfect. So I just, again, want to remind the member he's not to use names in the House of Commons of current sitting members or the Prime Minister or ministers. It has to be by their title. The Honourable Member for Grand Prairie, Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you. I was quoting, and I do apologize because I know even while quoting, I'm not allowed to use the members. But the member is correct. He confirms that I'm not spreading misinformation. He has confirmed that, in fact, this is truth, and so I'm going to continue in the reading of it. The government's gun control objectives were spelled out in the order in council issued on May 2020, and the legislation codifying them was encapsulated in Bill C-21, which was tabled last month. But the concern in April 2020 was the extent to which politics had threatened to interfere with a cross-border police investigation into how the killer managed to obtain and smuggle into Canada 4 illegal guns used to commit many of the 22 murders, end quote. Now, I'm going to jump a little bit further ahead in the report to the part in which the RCMP commanders in Nova Scotia refused to release details that they thought would compromise their investigation. So I'm quoting again. April 28th, 2020, just 1 week after the murders, when Nova Scotia Superintendent Darren Campbell briefed journalists at a news conference. On the firearms question, Campbell told journalists that he could not go into details because the investigation is still active and ongoing, except to confirm the gunmen had several semi-automatic handguns and semi-automatic rifles. Shortly after the news conference, Campbell, Assistant Commander Lee Bergerman, Leather, and Nova Scotia Communications Director Leah Scanlon were summoned to a meeting. The RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucky and a deputy from Ottawa were on the conference call. Lucky was not happy. Let me quote that again. Lucky was not happy. Campbell's handwritten notes made immediately following that meeting described what happened. The commissioner was obviously upset. She did not raise her voice, but her choice of words were indicative of her overall dissatisfaction of our work. The commissioner accused me of disrespecting her by not following her instructions. I was and remain confused over this. The commissioner said that she told Cons to tell the H Division to include specific information about the firearms used by the killer. However, I said we couldn't do that because it would jeopardize the ongoing efforts to advance the U.S. side of the case as well as the Canadian components of the investigation. Those are facts, and I stand by them. Campbell noted that Lucky went on at great length and said she was sad and disappointed that he had not provided those details to the media, Campbell continued. The commissioner said she had promised the Minister of Public Safety and the Prime Minister's office that the RCMP would release this information. I tried to explain there was no intent to disrespect anyone. However, we could not release this information at this time. The commissioner then said that we didn't understand, that it was tied to pending gun control legislation that would make officers and the public safer. She was very upset, and at one point, Deputy Commissioner Brian Benman tried to get things calmed down, but that had little effect. Some in the room were reduced to tears and emotional over the belittling reprimand.
Time is up. I've been trying to give him a signal there, but he does have 5 minutes of questions and comments. Questions and comments, Young Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, the Conservative back room is working hard. They have the new spin going on in regards to the whole issue of guns, and wherever they can get personal and start attacking, that's what they're going to do, Madam Speaker. And that's what we've heard for the last 5-6 minutes from the member. It's just comments attacking the integrity of the system. I'll stand by the RCMP because I support the RCMP. The minister has been very clear on the RCMP, but don't let the facts cause issues for the minister. My question, or for the member, my question to the member is this. In the legislation, there's the issue of yellow and red flags, an area in which I think a vast majority of Canadians, even some Conservatives, I suspect, would support him. What's his opinion and the value of having red and yellow flags within the legislation?
The honourable member for Grand Prairie, Mackenzie.
Well, this is a liberal. This is a liberal member again trying to spread information that isn't complete. The member opposite knows that the system currently has a flagging system. That guns that are legally held by those people who have gone through robust security checks, those who have gone through training programs, have to relinquish their guns if in fact they're flagged. That exists today. Now you can put a new name to the flagging system. You can put a color to it, but the fact is that exists today. And the members opposite know that they have been playing politics with this entire issue since the very beginning, and now we have in evidence, and he claims that I'm making this up, or that the back rooms of the Conservative Party are making this stuff up. It's printed in every newspaper in this country currently.
Questions and comments, Your Member for Avignon, La Matisse, Matin, Matapédia. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. And I understand the government is saying they want to reduce arms violence by tabling C-221, but Montreal Police has said that 75% of handguns used in violent crime are black market guns. So I'd like to hear what my colleague has to think about whether the government has done enough to fight illegal gun violence, particularly in terms of what's happening at the border.
Honourable member for Grand Prairie, Mackenzie.
Well, that is the real tragedy, Madam Speaker, that the Liberals would use the tragedy of the murders of 22 Nova Scotians, innocent civilians in many cases, to advance this agenda. Because all of the guns that were included in that were illegal weapons that were
Sorry, I ruled on this a while ago on the official opposition side, and the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary is has been in this House for some time, and he knows that he shouldn't be heckling or trying to ask questions while someone's already answering a question. The Honourable Member for Grand Prairie, Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and that's exactly what's happened. The Liberals have tried to shut down every time that the facts get in the way of their good story, the spin. That's the incredible heartbreak of what they did with the RCMP, where they instructed the commissioner to go out there and to release information and compromise an investigation, where in fact the 4 guns that were found were illegally owned and had come across the border illegally. That is what we should be tackling. But instead, the Liberals are passing legislation to reduce sentences for people that are trafficking in illegal weapons and going after law-abiding gun owners.
Questions and comments. Time for a brief question. The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Yes, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his comments. And, we know that, most violence in intimate partner relationships, in terms of murders, we know that there is a use of handguns. And I'm wondering what the Conservative Party will do, if any, to put in stricter laws for handguns to make sure that particularly women are safer. Thank you.
Brief answer from the member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that my colleague brings up a very important point. I think she misspoke when she suggested that the vast majority of domestic abuse was involving firearms. I don't believe that that stat is correct, but I do believe that those people who have been flagged as risks, those who have demonstrated either a compromised mental capacity and those who have demonstrated that they should not be in possession of a firearm. Those protocols exist, and I believe and support a flagging system that gets those confiscated from people that demonstrated that they should no longer have them. And obviously, we do need to get serious about domestic violence in this country. We do have to get serious about the importation of illegal weapons, and that's what we'd like to do on this side of the House.
Yep. Hear, hear.